because I was about to launch into something, so I thought I'd turn the recorder on, which is just exactly what we're talking about here. But imagine or think about the angle that what meditation does right from the beginning, or everything about it, when it's done in a certain style, is to put the student in a state of frustration and then invite him out of it. That's the sequence. And then he'll fall into frustration again, and we invite him out of it. Now, what that invitation is all about is quite complex, but we've covered it so many times. The way the Goenka says is, never mind, start again.
Mm-hmm.
Then he wiggles his chin. Never mind, start again.
Mm-hmm.
Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again. This takes part of the Eightfold Noble Path. It takes the idea that I am not um, completely a failure at this. I can, in fact, do this. A little bit of right attitude, but mostly the right view is that I can. And so when we recognize that the mind has wandered away, normally what will happen is that first invitation is that the student's going to get frustrated because the mind is not the way that he thought it was. Every student thinks, oh, I can watch my breath until they try to do it. All right, so that from the very, very get-go, the style that we're going to look at is that your job is only one, and that is to recognize whenever you get frustrated and come out of it. And the place to come out of it is into joy, into satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way of looking at it. That's another possible way of thinking about it, that all now of your practice that has anything to do with the teaching of the Buddha in the sense of suffering and no suffering is to recognize that both intentionally, by taking a 10-day course or setting down for meditation or any of that other stuff and clearing the table of all of the stuff that is the world, so that we start recognizing, let us say that there is so little input now that we get down to being able to see what's going on in the moment. Now is when the time is to introduce the frustration so that the student truly sees the frustration with the invitation of, hey man, you created this your own self. Nobody's wanting you to be frustrated. So
Mm-hmm.
come out of it. Come enjoy the band.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the song Cabaret.
Okay.
What's the use of sitting alone in your room? Life is a cabaret. Come join the music and begin to dance.
Uh-huh.
Life is a cabaret. It's a movie from the late '60s, a musical.
Okay.
Okay, but anyway, that's what it's all about. Is coming out of that victim's position that has frustration. And how do we do that is by developing a few skills. And here's the list of skills we want to develop. The number one skill is sati, naturally, is to remember to watch for frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is, in fact, the overall view is that I'm going to watch for frustration. That's the intention that's based in the right view.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we see the frustration, instead of following the path of frustration, we're going to drag ourselves out of it. That's the pick myself up and dust myself off part.
Uh-huh.
In the beginning, it takes effort. But as we develop the skill, of that effort, it actually becomes an easy effort.
Mm-hmm.
Easy effort. So actually no effort at all. We get used to doing it. Coming back and coming back. Oh, that's frustration. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that we're looking at it is that you're constantly now in your life putting yourself in states of frustration, and that your job now, if you want to think about it, instead of, oh, my job is to look at my hands, or oh, my job is to look at my eyes, the best way of looking at it is, oh, what are all of the frustrations that I have in my life? And you can do that while you're looking at hands and eyes and all of the other stuff. Because that action fact might not happen quite so often. But if you really kind of focus on it, you'll begin to see it even more and more often. So begin to see the big ones, the big frustrations.
How does this relate to dukkha?
That's just another name for it.
Okay.
I took dukkha, which is black normally, and painted it red and handed it to you in the name of frustration.
Okay. All right.
Caught me red-handed, literally.
Okay.
So that's what it's all about, is noticing these frustrations, and that's the first one. The very first frustration and the student should notice is that the mind has wandered away. Ouch! I thought I could control it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I feel bad.
Uh-huh.
But if you look at that way that Jesus said that, oh, it's a long story, but never mind where the source of it is. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But first, it will frustrate you.
Mm-hmm.
At first, and in fact, the original quote was, at first it'll piss you off. But
That was
that's
the original quote.
that. Yeah, the original quote was, at first it'll piss you off. Gloria Steinem, a New York Times editor and well known feminist in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But she says, "Oh no, I got it from somewhere else. I didn't invent that phrase. That you shall know the truth, but first, it will set you free, but it's going to tick you off first or frustrate you."
Uh-huh.
So that are here. What it means is that we thought if we knew the truth that it would set us free, but what it means really is that we have to be set free from the lies that we've been told,
Mm-hmm.
or the lies we tell ourselves. We have to actually, in other words, the truth will set you free, but it's not going to actually set you free. It means that we got to let go of a lot of crap to go by the way of the truth. So, going by the way of the truth means that we have to abandon our ignorance,
Okay.
because frustration is actually nothing but ignorance. Clear example of that is that when someone begins to understand their mind, they actually accept it quite happily. Oh, I'm quite satisfied with the mind the way that it is, and I didn't improve it any at all. Just became used to the way that it actually was, and it's actually quite a surprise sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way of looking at it, is that don't try to improve, try to enjoy what you've got. And don't try just because you've got no other choice, really.
Yeah. So this is basically the second noble truth, right? Or the
Yes.
third, I guess. Second and or third.
Moving it from the second to the third,
Yeah.
exactly, to become satisfied. Bhikkhu
Okay.
Buddhadasa talks about the little dhammanas. He even says that it's actually impossible for humans to stay alive if they're agitated 100% of the time, that we actually do cool off at least a little bit every day. One of the places is under the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we do let go. But we can cultivate that sense of satisfaction, the sense of letting go of it all, and cultivate it into satisfaction until it actually becomes a power.
Mm-hmm.
And when it becomes a real power, then that's a tool of the lion. And so this is why the Buddha has been known as the lion, is because among all other things, a Dhamma dude is not a victim. He's very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Actually strong enough to put up with stuff that most people will run away from. I give you two examples, Socrates and Jesus, two of my
Okay.
favorite Dhamma dudes.
Uh-huh.
There's also the story that Buddha got poisoned, but there are extenuating circumstances that puts doubt upon that we really don't know the actual source, even if we know which plate of food it was that poisoned him. But that's not even really sure. That he could have died of old age. I mean, he was an old man.
Mm-hmm.
But he did make the statement of don't blame the guy who gave me the food.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it easier to recognize the frustration than the just the Vedana or the feelings because there's a negative feeling to it. So it's easier to recognize when I'm in that than just whether there's something before it came to that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Actually, I would put the word frustration um, at a particular point. Let me explain the frame so that I can then place the word in it. The frame is the three feelings of I like it, I don't like it, and I'm not sure whether I like it or not. In that realm of very, very early, the I don't like it is just a basic feeling that quickly, within a second or less, grows into the next stage, which is then the basic underlying frustration. Normally, people don't see that frustration until it grows yet to another level. And those three levels are the Vedana itself of I don't like it, into the it, I don't like it means I don't want it to be here. I want to get rid of it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's the basic frustration is that something now is intolerable.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong here. The alarm bells start to go off,
Uh-huh.
but not loudly. They eventually do begin to get to go off loudly, but that's really at the point of full on clinging. That when there's an I there in the sense of I don't like it. So there's two levels of frustration to look to, and then a level below that.
So is there dukkha at every step of the way or only at the end? Would you only call it at the clinging point, or would you say that the tanha itself is contains dukkha and maybe even the Vedana contains dukkha?
Yes, exactly so. You can say that.
So it's just increasing amounts of dukkha, basically.
Increasing amounts of dukkha as you go down that rabbit hole.
What
Exactly so.
What about contact itself? Could that, before you get to Vedana, would that be?
Once some internal image contacts you, some feeling is going to arise. If you're wise at that point of contact, in other words, when you've got it, I've got you very early.
Mm-hmm.
And a clear example of that is the startle reflex.
Okay.
Okay, Dhammadus generally do not have a startle reflex. They don't jump and turn around and say, "Oh, you scared me." They don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, they're there with their feelings as soon as that happens. As soon as we become aware that something is there, we deal with it directly without having to go through of what the hell is that? Oh my goodness, kind of reaction. And that doesn't last long. In fact, it doesn't last hardly as long as it took me to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it in people, a startle reaction, a jump.
Yeah.
So that's a clear example of it. As also of knowing it at the level of feeling or at the point of contact, so that you can bring wisdom into that feeling. Once we bring wisdom into the point of contact, then we can choose how we're going to respond, because now we're going to respond not out of ignorance of a feeling. There's a very basic instinct coming out of a very primordial part of the mind, the reptilian part of the mind. Now we've brought the situation to the frontal cortex. Now it's something to be dealt with. And the quicker we can do that, then the better we'll deal with things. So long as we keep things in the anterior cortex, we're going to stay at the level of feelings of frustration, fear, anger, etc., like that, because that's where all of that stuff originates.
Okay. So sometimes it's described, as the second arrow, the thing that can be avoided. There's the actual physical pain, for instance, and then there's our reaction to it. The second one can be avoided even if the first one can't. So, with the physical pain, would that be considered dukkha also, or is dukkha just reserved for the second arrow? Is it just reserved for?
Okay, let's look at physical pain in Goenka's terminology, and that is a bodily sensation. Ere how noisy, ere how loud it is.
Mm-hmm.
Have not you just done a Goenka retreat?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw the eyes go over to check to make sure that, yeah, I was there. So, you were there. You got it. You already know the answer to that question. When you go into those strong determination sittings, one of the things that Goenka gives you as a tool is, and he doesn't use this terminology. Let me use this terminology and see if it's got any reflection upon what they were saying. I call it the game of hide and go seek. Have you ever heard of that game in
Yeah.
reality? Yeah, okay. Except that we're going to do it backwards. First, we're going to seek, and then we're going to hide. And what I mean by that is that if a sensation gets very loud and noisy in the leg or something during the strong determination sittings or whatever, we're going to leave the legs sitting as they are, and we're going to go look at it. Look closely at it. Look deep into it. Seek that dude out. What we find out is what we thought was a 3-inch long pain winds up, I can't find the actual center or point of it, that when I chase it from here to there. But I
Mm-hmm.
can't find exactly where it was. And not only that, but where I'm looking is not always what's in pain. Always the pain is somewhere else. Just a slightly inch over. Let me go over there. Nope, what's, and then we wind up kind of chasing it around.
Okay.
Okay, that's when we go and leave that seeking phase into the hiding phase and say, well, now I'm going to ignore it completely. And I'm going to go about my scanning or whatever else I'm doing, and I'm going to leave that place alone and I'm going to ignore it. And when the time comes, and there's two times for that to happen. One is that when it gets really noisy again, And the other one is when it's just time because that's the way that we're doing a scan, and so you come back to it in order. And so now we look at it again and we try to chase it down to find out what that is.
Okay.
Okay? Now imagine that after you've done a Goenka retreat several times and you've really got that technique down and you're on your way home on your motorbike and you get into a wreck and somebody breaks your leg and now you're laying there on the pavement. What are
Mm-hmm.
you going to do about that broken leg? Are you going to be into a poor me state or I'll never walk again or how many different kind of thoughts of suffering can you have? Or can you say, hey, this leg's going to be all right. Let me see what's happening with that. And so you
Mm-hmm.
start looking at it, start
Uh-huh.
seeing it for what it is. By that time, you're probably on an operating table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the way of looking at it. All right, there's other ways of seeing it, and we can go all the way of being crucified. But in all cases, the thought of fear, excuse me, the thoughts and the images and the reactions that we have to seeing medical procedures in whatnot are different than really having something major occur. Broken bones. Broken bones happen to be my favorite. I don't know how many broken bones I've got, but I got some doozies.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain is always easy enough to deal with when we think of it as this is how it's feeling right now. But when we think about, oh no, what's to become of me? Or, oh, I'll never walk again. Or, ouch, I can't take this. All those kind of victims' thoughts. And then the pain overwhelms the mind simply because the mind allows that to happen. But with the mind, with the lion's mind, you can always keep that sensation at bay in the sense of I don't care about that sensation. I can handle that. Even if it's a broken bone or just merely a leg pain that I've got here in a meditation class, it's all the same. It's an intense sensation and nothing more.
Okay.
And I don't like it a whole lot. And that's suffering.
Uh-huh.
Let me get that really straight because you've done a Goenka retreat. You know, because they've said this, that it's just a sensation, just an intense situation, sensation. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
No meaning, no, just, in fact, it could be looked at as a message or a messenger that is persistent. He won't shut up. He's trying to deliver you a message. He's trying to say there's an alarm, there's a fire here in number 5 dryer. Okay? And he just won't shut up about it. But that doesn't mean that you have to feel bad. You can go take care of the fire in number 5 dryer, either historical or happy. It's up to you, depending upon if you can manage your feelings.
Yeah.
And the way to manage your feeling is to know them as they arise when they're very weak, because the stronger they get, the more difficult they are to manage.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the part about sati, about remembrance. Just keep kind of looking and watching and recognizing what we're doing.
What are your thoughts about strong determination sitting?
I would not, under normal circumstances, use strong determination sittings as a practice in a retreat that I would run.
Uh-huh.
But I do see their value.
Okay.
And so, in that regard, I would never say to a student, don't go do Goenka retreat because of the strong. No, no. If you get through those strong determination sittings correctly, they'll be of enormous value to you. And in fact, if you think about it, this little talk that we've had just right now proves that to be true. because you kind of been there, done that in the sense of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So here's the question that I have back for you.
okay.
What pain are you going to allow into your mind such that, and when I use the word pain, I'm talking about a bodily sensation, such that it will come into your mind, invade your mind, keep track, stay in your mind, pester you, and allow you to suffer nonstop? What kind of pain would it be that would take over your mind, completely crowding your mind?
I mean, I guess it would be a very intense sensation.
Okay. Well, now let's just say, well, there are other sensations that are almost as that intense, and I can manage those. So let me do a pump of a little bit of mental iron here and come to the say, well, no, I can handle those too.
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, so this I have a question that's a little sidetracked, but it's not that sidetracked, but it's a pragmatic question. But I don't want to derail this. Should I ask it or should I just wait?
Go ahead. I don't care.
Okay. So I think I got a lot of value out of the strong determination sittings at the Goenka retreat.
Hmm.
And since I got back, I generally do something like a strong determination sit. I generally try not to move for an hour when I meditate. I have I got a Caesar, I don't know how to say it, Caesar bench as in like a Zen bench. I don't know what to call it.
Zazen.
I messed. I didn't come even close. All right, a zazen bench, as well as just a pillow. So when I use the zazen bench, it's an hour is super easy. It doesn't hurt at all. Only when I get up, it hurts my knees a little bit. But when I'm actually sitting, it's not as easy. Whereas when I don't, my leg falls asleep and it gets very uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So for that reason, occasionally I throw in just the non Zazen bench explicitly because it becomes very uncomfortable, because it gives me something to work with. So, yeah, I guess what I'm asking. So, when it gets intense, I see thoughts of like getting up. I can feel the craving. It's a very clear, especially if I'm in a very clear state of mind and I'm very focused, I get a lot out of it. I mean, I can feel the arising. I can feel how kind of discrete these sort of thought patterns are. They come in waves and they kind of go away for a while
Hmm.
in the way that any other thought does, in the way it just comes and goes. And yeah,
And the
and
thought is, I don't like this.
yeah, should I move? How long's it been? How much more? And these are just kind of, constructions that are born out of that Tanha, I guess.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so I was just kind of curious about, yeah, because to me that I do this, I only do it maybe once or twice a week. But yeah, does that make sense to keep doing it? Because when I use the bench, it's not even uncomfortable for me. I could go an hour and a half easy. But and the other thing is my foot's falling asleep. I don't view that as like causing any kind of damage. It's just uncomfortable.
All right, here's one of the things you can also do is to readjust the leg or actually move it sit up or whatever and get the blood flowing and then put it back in the position that it was and
Uh-huh.
continue on. Because that would be what they would recommend at Wat Suan Mok, is
Okay.
to don't sit there in unnecessary pain because you've already done it. You know what we're talking about. You've given me, in fact, here a very good description. So you know exactly what it's like. And
Mm-hmm.
you basically know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
okay, which you've already started experiencing in that regard that we could call mind over matter.
Uh-huh.
And we say in that regard, the matter is, what's the matter with your leg?
Uh-huh.
The answer is, it's got no blood.
Yeah.
All right. So the logical thing to do then would be to put it in a position so that it has some blood, as opposed to uh, treating it like a starving child. So the strong determination sittings are actually done best once you've gone beyond this point. In fact, legs falling to sleep is not the kind of pain that I was talking about. There's a different kind of relaxation stuff. Uh, Goenka talks about it in the sense of bodily sankharas, tightnesses in the leg. And a clear example of that is the students who can't put their knees on the ground and sit flat on the floor without a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that setting, that is the way that the monks sit, and it's the way a lot of Thais sit, and it's also that the Thai people sit on the floor, but partly because it's just it's a paradise they live in, not a cold place. And most of the like even in Atlanta, the furniture that they have in Atlanta is something that's different. I mean, it's almost could be tropical, but in fact, you have the same furniture that they would have in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, so um, whenever the family eats together right here, they always all sit on the floor to eat.
Mm-hmm.
My stepdaughter is so remarkable because and I've seen her do this from the time that she was about 14 years old. For the past 7 years, I have seen her sit in the lotus posture to eat, in the full lotus posture. She sits and eats because she likes the position. She's been doing it for a child. My daughter Kitty can sit in postures, including the full Zen posture that I'm about to talk to you about, and sit there in that position for long times of play.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me tell you what the actual Zen posture is for you when you're sitting on the Zen stool, the Zazen stool. What you want to do is uh, kind of stand up onto your knees so that you put a major space between your butt and that stool.
Mm-hmm.
Then take the stool away completely and to now sit back down on your heels.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they do it in Japan. They don't use a zazen stool. They use that. All right. Now, what that does is that it actually puts self pressure on several places. One, it places pressure on the knees. Another is naturally on the heels because you've got the whole weight of the body sitting on the heels, as well as the flatness of the foot, so that the foot has to go all the way from the toes all the way up to the heel, flat on the ground.
Yeah.
And any little spaces in there would be what Goenka would call sankara. But once the foot is completely flat onto the floor, then that position becomes just as comfortable and just as easy as doing it with the bench, except now the legs are straightened out. Now, here's the thing about that posture. That particular posture is used in Japan from the old days because that was the posture that they could, while they were drawing their sword, they would use their thumb, the left thumb, to throw the sword out literally as hard as they could into the air, or at least um, 1.5 feet out of the scabbard. While they were taking the right hand to grab that sword, they were simultaneously up on their knees, immediately up on their knees so that they could get their left foot put planted on the floor so that they could then, using that left foot, to throw the whole body and the right leg so that they could get that free and throw it out into the horse stance while they're bringing that sword up and going whack. So they go literally from the sitting position to the striking position within a couple of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the training that they do. How quick can you stand up out of that posture is one of
Mm-hmm.
the trainings that they use in Japan because it's an attack posture. And I bet you didn't even know that, and here you are with that bench and all, because you cannot come out of that posture as an attack posture with that bench in the way.
No. Actually,
I have really been around the horn with this. I have never been to Japan, but I have done so much study.
I actually got the bench after the Goenka thing because they had one there and I really liked it.
Uh-huh.
But also, yeah, and my feet don't go to sleep when I use it, so that's why I got it. But
Okay, well, try that Zen posture without the bench.
uh-huh.
Okay, which is basically what you're going to have are the 2 feet together, with the ankles together, the lower thigh muscles together, the knees kind of together, coming up, and then sitting down on the heels, exactly the way that they do it correctly with the Zen bench,
Mm-hmm.
except that now you take the Zen bench out and you sit right down on the heels.
Uh-huh.
Because that Zen bench is already what, an inch or 2 inches above the knees, or excuse me, above the heels. So when you take the Zen bench out and sit right flat down, that's going to put a new pressure on the knees that you've never had to deal with before because that bench kept you off of it. It also puts different kind of pressures on the feet, ankles, etc., like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different kind of posture. But I thought you might want to play with that. And like I said again, I use the word play. I'm not giving you an assignment or anything. But this you can use in conjunction. So now you've got 4 different postures to use. One is Zen bench. The other one is Zen without the bench. The third one is strong determination sitting, and the fourth one is no. At least allow the leg when you recognize that it's gone to sleep because of lack of circulation to adjust that leg so that it does get back into circulation, and then put it back the way it was. So these
Mm-hmm.
would be 4 different postures for you to play with, as well as that dingbat bell going off all the time so that you start. So you've got quite a lot to do now, including adding eyes and the big deal, if I can say so, is adding frustration. To start watching for things that are frustrating, things you don't like.
Yeah. Yeah. Dukkha.
Okay.
So what I do is when the bell goes off, I decide whether or not if I sense that there's dukkha, then I go through that route, which is second noble truth, third noble truth, deep breath. And if I can't sense obvious dukkha, then I just explore or become aware of the Vedana and body sensations with both of those. Although what I found happens is that I don't have it as a bell. I have it as a buzzer. Like it just vibrates because I don't want to annoy the people I work with. But I like at least a couple days last week, I wasn't really doing it because I can't distinguish that from when someone's calling or texting or something, or if it's just another notification. So I have to find another way to do it. If I can make it vibrate twice or something that's more distinctive, I'll play around with that.
That's a good point. Uh, but all you have to do is turn the phone to look at the page to see which one it is. Each one of the things that you mentioned are quite distinct.
Yeah.
And so it's all you do is look at it and then you say, oh, I either got to answer this or, I can be here now.
Yeah. I feel like maybe I'll just turn it back on the bell and use, earbuds or something. But
Mm.
because I'm trying to, when I work now, I'm trying to work more meditatively. So I'm trying to be very aware of my focus, how focused it is versus kind of, distributed, how much I'm actually focusing what I'm trying to, as well as I started trying to, which I do when I meditate, I try to recognize thoughts before they become fully formed in my head. So when I do that, usually they just kind of like, I can't even usually tell completely what they are because they're just kind of like scratching at the surface and then they go down. So when I actually do this, I get a lot more done at work. So, and it's good practice too. So,
Excellent. Excellent. Yes, there's all kinds of benefits.
yeah,
All kinds of benefits. But if we desire and cleave to those benefits, then they're not nearly worth as much as if they just a happy surprise. So allow whatever happens as just being a, oh, I like that, as a happy surprise.
yeah,
Fill your life with happy surprises. And part of that has to do with giving really low expectations to humanity. Keep reminding yourself that, hey, America is so wonderful, it's so great that half the people voted for Donald Trump. And that shows you what quality of humanity you and I live in. And we're part of it. That's
at,
it.
at the Goenka thing on the last day, which is when you can start talking.
Uh huh.
Several people, that was their first thing is they said, I really wonder what scandals there are now, or I really wonder if we're at war now, what he's done the last week.
They've got them right. They've really got it. They're all sucked into it.
Yeah.
I find it really hilarious. And that's the best way to find it is just hilarious. It's all just so hilarious. So anyway, the frustrations that everybody feels, it's actually intentionally manufactured. The people who have a lot of money have the idea that if I can keep the poor white trash angry at the poor black trash, then neither one of them will get angry at me for taking all of their money and making them poor. And so that's basically the situation that you find in the United States. And in the service of that, they've ruined the school system, dumbed down a whole lot of other stuff, and finally those poor white trash are so stupid that they voted for Donald Trump. That's my family too.
Yeah, mine too.
So that's a good reason to stay out of politics is that, wow, look how many people are in so much pain. Yeah, everybody who dabbles in politics, anytime that you identify with one group or the other, there's going to be ups and downs. And
Yeah.
that you identify with that group, you're going to go up or you're going to go down with it. There's going to be frustrations right there.
Yeah, so this is
And
obviously second noble truth, but I guess, yeah, aren't there some things that are worth getting attached to, or you don't think so? I mean, aren't there?
yes, there are. In fact, that's a major question to ask. Thank you very much. In fact, if you understand Paticca Samuppada at that level of tanha, at the level of clinging, the Buddha says there's only four modes of clinging. And yet in the American Buddhism, it's got that all you have to drop all attachments. But there are only really four modes of clinging that can be seen as the four primary instincts, which would be attachment to self, directly as selfishness, attached to materialism, attachment to rights, rules, laws, rituals, society, doing it this way, believing the lies you've been told, being superstitious, and being controlled, in fact, by those lies that you've been told so as to keep you afraid. So when we drop all of society, the last one that we drop, or actually the last one on my list without talking about it chronologically, time frame of dropping it, is our attachments to views, attitudes, and that in fact waving a flag, any particular flag, means that we identify with that flag. And that flag then, like the Democratic flag, the American national flag, the Christian flag, the Burmese flag, the Thai flag, whatever flag it is, that if I identify myself with that Thai flag and says I'm Thai, then whatever happens in Thailand, where things go up and down, and there's things I like and don't like, because I'm attached to what happens to Thailand. If I'm not attached to the flag of Thailand, then whatever happens in Thailand doesn't bother me. In fact, I don't even bother to follow the news in Thailand.
Yeah.
Okay, so look at it from that position. So anytime that you identify yourself as a progressive, then when the progressives suffer, you'll suffer. If you identify with evangelical Christian, then you're really hurting because they're really suffering right now. They're having a major identity crisis, and if the church itself is having an identity crisis, then why should anybody identify with that identity crisis? And so people are leaving it in droves. So here's the point about that. Anything that you identify with that holds a point of view, an NGO, a government, an organization, you even got to be careful about Buddhism so that you can wear it proudly without making it a flag. You make it a part of your life instead. But holding on to banners for the outside. An example of that, by the way, is that in Burma, the Burmese government is really, really close to the Sangha. They've been that way for oh so long, that in fact the junta that is in control of the Burmese government for so many years since the British got out could have never gotten into power without the power of the Sangha there. Now you have the Rohingyas, which are having trouble, the Muslims, and the Buddhist monks and the army, and everybody wants the Muslims out of there, even though they've been there for 50, 60 years. But the reason now they want them out of there is because there's a bunch of renegades coming from Bangladesh causing a lot of trouble. So the Rohingya are caught in the middle. Now, I give you the story as to, okay, which side am I going to join? The answer is, am I going to join, or actually the question is, am I going to join the side of the Buddhist monks or not? The answer is, why should I join anyone's side? Because I really haven't been there. I don't know what's going on. And so I shouldn't carry any particular banner, not even a Buddhist banner in many cases.
Okay, so what are scenarios in which attachment is okay?
Attached to this present moment. There's a sutta about it.
Okay.
Attached to this very moment. Don't live in the past, don't live into the future, but come here and be here now. That's the name that Tathagata gave himself. And so that's a fortunate attachment. It's Sutta number 131 in the Majjhima Nikaya. Is actually number 132, and I think also number 133. They really, really grind it in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one fortunate attachment is to be here now, to be in the present moment. I'll give you another one. This one's actually extraordinarily even more important, and that is to become attached to the Four Noble Truths. Or another way of saying it is to become attached to the teachings of the Buddha and have it firmly attached into the mind of dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Start watching for suffering. Start noticing what is suffering and what is not suffering. That's a really, really, the more strongly you attach to it, the more benefit and value you will gain from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Is those two examples enough, or do you want some others? Because the others are trivial compared to the two that I just gave you.
No, so the things that you can become attached to are basically the Dharma, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
You can also become attached to spreading joy.
Okay. So you so
That was a little
there
hard
aren't
for some.
scenarios in which becoming attached to a person is okay then.
um, the question then at that level, and there, by the way, is a sutta. I think it's number 86, but I'm not sure of the number. It's in the 80s someplace, where the Buddha actually does address the issue that uh, there will be grief to come to you from those who are dear. Examples will be that teenage sons disappoint their dads. The daughter marries the wrong kid. One of the kids die.
Mm-hmm.
Mom dies. That's the biggie. Okay. But many, many accidents can happen because of war, pestilence, things that we don't count on, etc., like that. And everything is temporary, and nobody knows what you're going to lose. That couch that you're on, this may in fact be the very last time you lay on it. Who
Hope
knows?
not.
So think about it. Thank you. Say thank you, Mr. Couch. You're supporting me very well right now. I hope you're here tomorrow. So when we lose something that we love, then there is going to be grief found.
Yeah.
If you're willing to go through that grief, then it's okay to do the attachment. But you got to know that this is a bait and switch.
Okay.
Okay, everything changes. Anything that you attach to that's not noble is going to get ground right into the ground, and you're not going to like it very much when you lose that wife or that couch or that daughter or that loved one or even one's own life, because all things are temporary.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. So what you're saying then is that if you become attached to basically anything, there's going to be suffering involved. But you're not saying that that's a reason not to get attached to anything.
Exactly so. The suffering is optional. The grief comes only to those who are ignorant of it. So you, in fact, as a Dhamma dude, can prepare yourself for the fact that your mom's going to be dead, and so are you.
Mm-hmm.
So when the old man, I think now they dress him in black, and he's got a skeleton face, and he's got a sigh from the old wheat cutting days. And when that dude comes, you say, "Hey man, where you been? I've been waiting on you."
Mm-hmm.
Here's also a very clear example of what I just said, but this one's real. And that is George W. Bush, the elder. When he died, one of the stories that they told about him was the friend who came to visit him, I think that same day that he did die on, and they got into a conversation, and he asked Pappy, "Where do you want to go today?" And he says, "I want to go to heaven." So, whatever level of mentality was at, he knew at least that it was time to go and that he was happy about it. He was ready.
Uh huh.
Okay? So, if you can go out with such grace, then you will be also a champion, a lion, at least in that moment. And everybody also does have a choice about how are you going to go out.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I played with of thinking about is looking in the guy's face and say, "I'll see you in hell." Is my last.
Okay, I think I'll have more questions about this, but I feel like, well, to me, it's a fundamental thing, and it's something that,
I go deep, don't I?
well, I
The
mean, so,
Dhamma goes, not me. I'm just following the Dhamma. It's the Dhamma goes deep. It goes right down to the basic core of who and what we are as human.
so I remember one time early on, we were talking, maybe the third time we spoke, and you said something along the lines of some things that seem pleasurable actually aren't on closer examination.
Hmm.
And I said something along the lines of, "What about excitement?" And you said, "Excitement actually isn't that pleasant of a sensation." So I understand now what you're talking about, what you were talking about, because I was in a conversation. It was a really fun conversation. But I started realizing that there was a lot of agitation I was feeling in the conversation because, like, I was laughing really hard and, like, it wasn't entirely pleasant. The whole thing, like, it was a good interaction overall, but, like, not every aspect of it was good. There was a lot of actual unpleasantness that I probably wouldn't have noticed a year ago. So, and I can understand that that kind of agitation would be present because the example I'd used previously was what if you're excited about your birthday the next day when you're a kid or something like that. And I can see how that I could see that maybe if I were more perceptive, that would be a sort of agitation the same way that I realized that this conversation, even though on the surface was a really fun, enjoyable conversation, there's it might be due to lack of perception of the actual pleasantness or unpleasantness. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I've been thinking about yeah, the idea of recalibrating what's pleasant and what's unpleasant, where that leads in the sense of are you not supposed to get attached to your own family members, or you're not supposed to get attached to friends, or you're not supposed to get attached to significant others? And anyway, I've just been thinking a bit so about all that sort of thing.
All right, so here's what we need to do in that level is start investigating what you mean by the word attachment. Another way that you can use it is enjoyment. That you enjoy being around the people that you're around. But who knows? One of the people that you know may be dead this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? I'm not predicting anything, please.
Okay. Got it recorded.
By the way, on the side, one of the things that I did as a monk in primarily North Carolina, but actually all over. I've done funerals in Texas. I've done funerals in Colorado. I've done funerals in Washington, D.C., but most of the funerals are in North Carolina at the various watts there. You'd be surprised how many elderly Lao people want monks at their funerals.
Hmm.
And so we did a lot of funerals. And that had one of the advantages that it had was is that it made death really kind of ordinary
Hmm.
because we did them so often. Possibly the most memorable was, I think it was 2006, but anyway, we buried or had cremation ceremonies for four Lao young men in the morning, and then we had a funeral for two Vietnamese young men in the afternoon. And I did both funerals. And those young men, all six of them, died by killing each other. And yet, the families did not have the kind of, what do you call it, the Hatfields and the McCoys
Hmm.
mentality. The Vietnamese and the Lao people didn't do that in the U.S.
Hmm.
That the parents and all the community said, wow, I wish our kids had not gotten involved with that stuff
Yeah.
rather than following the kids down the rat hole. That was really good. I like that. But anyway, those are the kind of things that happened that I've been a part of because I was a Buddhist monk in the U.S. during those years. Uh, Goenka had it at Dhammagiri had a tape of an autopsy
Okay.
that he would let some of us look at. I think there's actually autopsies on YouTube now. You might see if you can locate one.
Why would I?
Well, because there you are, all getting laid out and cut up. Just nothing but a human body. Are you the body or are you not? If you're squeamish about it, then we have automatically the thought of, it's me. It's me they're cutting. It's me. And so we become squeamish, for instance, also at looking at medical procedures
Hmm.
because of fears like that. So that's why. But the Buddha, they did it big time because they had the big time circus, I guess. It was called the charnel ground, where the time of the in the time of the Buddha, they didn't bury and they didn't cremate. They abandoned the bodies, and they would abandon them in the same way that you would abandon anything in the city dump. And so among the refuge would be bodies. And so in the meditations there are 10 stages of corpses. Not that there's 10 different separate meditations, but every day you go and look at that corpse, it's in a different state as it goes from flesh to worm eaten to bloated to uh, uh, bones exposed to everything's getting eaten away down to bleached bones.
Wait, you're saying that they would meditate on the decomposition of the bodies?
Yep, 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 yep. And all I'm asking you is for an autopsy or two. Because then that's when we begin to really see for ourselves, I am not the body.
Mm-hmm.
I am not the body.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know.
All right. Well, never mind. You just go back and keep track of what your eyes are looking at.
Yeah. The eye thing, is that specific to when I'm talking to somebody, or is that outside of that?
uh, the better at it that you get, the more opportunities you'll take. So I'm not going to put a yes or a no on that, but
Okay.
rather to make it a skill of sati to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind. Start again. Beginner's mind.
Yeah.
There I go again.
Eyes and hands.
Yes. Uh huh. Eyes and hands, and frustrations. Let's not us forget that.
Yeah, which by frustrations you mean any dukkha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's start watching for it while it's only at the level of frustration, with the invitation that we're going to look at it to see if we can catch it at just the bare feeling level, in the sense of don't like, don't like.
Yeah.
Yep. hmm Before it winds up as a frustration.
Yeah, the other day I've always been very distracted by noise. Much less so since I started meditating. Much less so. But sounds of like somebody eating or sounds of somebody talking or anything like that. Normally I couldn't focus at all. But a few days ago, I was at a cafe and I intentionally didn't have headphones on. It was a very noisy environment. And I was just gonna try to do work there. And yeah, it was a really good exercise because I would find myself someone would be talking and then I'd just find myself starting to get annoyed and I could just like drop that. So it's I guess it's at that point in the dependent origination,
Oh, excellent. You're talking about that you went out and did the very thing that I'm asking you to go out and do now. That's
yeah,
excellent. Excellent.
yeah, yeah. It was funny. Yeah. I've been realizing how like a lot of so so I have a friend who always complains about the same stuff and she seems oblivious to the fact that there's a reason she always complains about the same stuff. It's her, it's not anybody else. It's just, but it's just like, it seems like you could rearrange the labels and it's the exact same shit going on every time she talks about things going on. Then I realize it's the exact same thing for me too. It's the exact
Excellent. Excellent.
just these themes getting played out. Yeah, it's funny.
One of the terms that I picked up when I was in psychology that I used to great benefit and effect at the time was the humorous use of the phrase, "Ain't it awful?"
Okay.
And for some reason that came up when you were describing that to this girl. So if she gets into repetitive asking or saying the same thing over and over again, you can remind her that she's saying the same thing over and over again when you use this catchphrase. Yeah, ain't it awful?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's taking and putting a humorous twist on all the suffering that she's laying out.
Yeah, I think she's completely oblivious to it. But it's not just her. Yeah, I mean,
Everybody does it.
yeah.
You can begin to see how everyone is playing victim.
Yeah.
She's playing victim. And here I'm inviting you to come out of that playing victim and start being the lion of the stage.
Yeah. No, it's Stuff's starting to make more sense now.
For some reason, the teaching of the Buddha is so logical, so clear, and so easy to understand. And yet, in Western culture, it is so counterintuitive. Everything about Buddhism seems to be upside down to the Westerner, so that we have to, you know, do it over and over and over again before we begin to even see that we've been looking at everything from a backwards position.
Yeah.
And that we can change our position from being a victim of circumstances, a victim to the very things this girl is complaining about.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I mean, I wonder why the West. I feel like maybe the West is more married to this idea of like things not being changeable in terms of your mind or something. Like you're born a certain way and that's your identity, and it isn't fixable. Like people say, be here now. I mean, this is something that everyone recognizes is stay in the present moment. People recognize as a good thing. But I don't think it would occur to almost anyone to actually do exercises to get better at that. I feel like it's like, oh, this person is really in the moment kind of person. It's almost, I don't know if it's because of like genetics or like the science kind of in the West is thought. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about that. I don't know.
Well, let me introduce a couple of things that go way back. One of them is the enormous, we have to look at one of the ways there was enormous control over the population of the people from twin organizations. Those twin organizations was the Pope and the King. And the king was king because he had the divine right to be the king, and he was supported by the church. But then the church was mightily supported by the king through donations and all kinds of other stuff. Now, that system just ran hunky dory, I think, for about 500 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it don't work anymore. But if you think about it, there those two forces still exist in every country now. There's almost a, let us say, a marriage that is so old now that it's kind of both, everything is so familiar, and also the couple are at war with each other and they don't know how to separate. And those two individuals then are the government of each country and the religions of each country. And look at how that dance of I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you between the evangelicals especially, but all Christians in general have with the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
That whole relationship got started, sorry, what, 809 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's an old story. And it continues on, and that the population of every country has suffered because of that relationship between church and state. And that relationship is just as strong whether the church and state is separated with a constitution or not. In fact,
Yeah.
just trying to separate them in a constitution proved my point of how internally connected they are everywhere already without you even having to put that in the constitution. So, knowing that that's the situation, most of the rites, rules, rituals, ceremonies, political stuff, and everything comes out of those two um organizations and the way that they dance with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that the puppet masters are the ones who have the most money. He who has the gold makes the rules. And so, at least within the Republican Party, now this happens in many places, but you can see three groups that are distinct. One is the super wealthy, who want even more money. They're the really super greedy ones, the ones on top. and want more and more. So they're already paying the politicians, but they're paying the politicians actually a pittance when you can think of I give him 50 or $100 million and he helps pass a bill that gets me back 100 million. So
Yeah.
that's the way that the whole system works. So they bribe the politicians to pay them off, and so what they do then is they lie to the constituency to say, oh, the Republican Party is this, when in fact, secretly or quite knowledgeably, everybody knows, no, it's not this, it's that. And what is that? It's the big money, the big bucks that own the Republican Party. In that regard, you can see the big three of the second noble truth: the greed, the ignorance, and now the third component is the ill will that the people of America are feeling. They're all right now really dissatisfied, but instead of being dissatisfied with the super rich, instead they're dissatisfied with each other. That's the lie they've been told. So you have these racial divides, and these racial divides are so interesting that they've actually fractured the nation with so much pressure. And it's all a pack of lies. The real problem in the United States is the greed, the big money. The question is, how do the Americans get out of it? My answer is, I'm sure they'll work something out. I'll enjoy watching the show. But meanwhile, your personal job is to come out of being a victim of that society and start living your life as if you were, in fact, were independent of it. Because, in fact, you're not really affected by the war inside the Republican Party, or the war between the Democrats and the Republicans, or the fact that Donald Trump is in the office. None of that really affects you. But when you don't like any of it, that's when it affects you.
Mm-hmm.
Hence feeling. So if there's anything that happens in politics and you don't like it, notice that. The frustrations of politics, because that shows that you're attached to something that is not wholesome, not beneficial.
Yeah.
Not worthy of being attached to.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got any other questions?
I don't really think so. I guess I can add eyes to my list. Hands and eyes. Hands and eyes.
and frustrations.
Well, that was already on my list.
Okay. Let us not have any frustrations caused by either a government or a religion.
Yeah, I really don't. I view it kind of as a game, politics.
It is. Actually, looking at it a little deeper, it is a game. And there are puppet masters pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And we assume that since they haven't pulled them quite too hard in the past 75 years, and those who did pull the strings too hard are out of business now, let's hope that there's nobody pulling the strings too hard, and everybody is afraid that Donald Trump is going to do just that.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll see.
Enjoy the show.
Yeah.
You've got a ticket to the show.
First row.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's finish this up, and I'll see you soon again.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
All righty.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.